Is your national food guide all a big fat lie? Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome back to Abby's Kitchen. Today we're going to be revisiting the government-appointed food guide, following Melissa from Answer in Progress's experience to see exactly what happens to your body if you attempt to follow it to a T. Spoiler alert, yeah. But is this controversial government document fully designed by the food industry with no real basis in health or science? Well, buckle up, we have a lot to unpack. Let's start by catching up with Melissa's why for revisiting what I see as a really archaic and whitewashed piece of advice. Also, don't forget to check out my brand new podcast, Bite Back. Honestly, the feedback so far has been so amazing, and I would love if you would give it a listen. Okay, quick little water break here. I've always been a big water drinker, but I don't love the taste of my water at home. So in an effort to avoid plastic bottles, a good filter has been so key. Let's talk about today's sponsor, Aquasana. So if you're new to water filters, this is basically the Cadillac. Aquasana is an award-winning filtration system that provides the maximum filtration of what you don't want while leaving you with all the beneficial minerals and electrolytes in your water that you do want, like potassium, calcium, and magnesium in your water. It has also been designed with the environment in mind by using reusable outer filter casings and filter cartridges made out of recycled and compostable materials. Unlike traditional pitcher filters that use gravity to slowly pull water through, Aquasana's clean water machine is super fast and effective, getting you 8 ounces of filtered water in 8 seconds. It also lasts 7.5 times longer than the leading pitcher filter, so you don't have to remember to replace it nearly as often. Because literally, that is me. I'm always like, did I do this replacement 9 days ago or 9 months ago? We might never know. So very important for us forgetful folks. And honestly, the water just tastes way better. Everyone's tap water has like its own flavor, and I am just not a fan of ours. You're looking to start replacing plastic water bottles with delicious filtered water at the click of a button. You can scan the QR code or click the link in my description to get 55% off all systems, $49 and up, plus free shipping. All right, let's get into it.
It's the middle of the day and I haven't had a proper meal yet. I know that's not good, but what ends up happening is I overthink every single one of my meals because I want them to be delicious and perfect. But when mealtime actually comes around, I end up being super unprepared. So I'll either, one, skip meals, which is physically exhausting, or I'll end up ordering takeout, which is financially exhausting. And I can't afford to keep doing this.
I get it. It is super common for folks to feel totally overwhelmed by nutrition.
I'm overwhelmed!
Especially when people on TikTok are literally calling a new food toxic every single week. This is exactly why I developed my Hunger Crushing combo and also New Theory, ultimately to really kind of tone down all of the mental gymnastics of eating well that you have to do every day. So ultimately you can focus on other acts of self-care and joy.
I needed some sort of loose guideline to help me figure out which foods I should be buying so that I could figure it out from there. Today I should be eating 7 to 8 servings of fruits and veggies, 6 to 7 servings of grain products, 2 servings of milk and alternatives, and 2 servings of meat and alternatives. I know this one's old, but it's what I remember being taught as a kid. In the 4th grade, we had this assignment where we needed to track all of the foods we ate for a week and share it with the class.
I'm sorry, what? 4th grade? That kind of assignment should never be done. Never mind to super vulnerable 9 or 10-year-old girls for whom a shocking 40% are already reportedly dieting. Like, are they recommending that these girls download MyFitnessPal? Oh, the way I would be carrying it into the principal's office to complain about that. Anyway, this guide is outdated and has since been revised, thank goodness. But we went a whole 12 years before this little janky rainbow got a facelift to reflect the actual science in 2019. And we'll talk a lot more about that soon. But let's take a look at how she fared following the OG guide from our childhood. In short, Melissa killed it. Like, coming from a woman who described feeling paralyzed by feeling overwhelmed with meal planning, she really went all out on some amazing looking meals. So like salmon with sauteed greens and noodles, she had eggs with sourdough and fruit, salmon with rice and cucumber salad, and a pasta with sauteed greens and ground meat. But not surprisingly, she described often feeling like she had to kind of drag herself through her meals that she didn't really have an appetite for just to hit her daily servings of each group. Most notably, the grains group.
I've been trying to get 2 servings of grains at every meal because I need like 6 to 7 every single day. This is a lot of bread to be eating this early in the morning. I can't finish it. I'm sorry.
But I do know that eating like this wasn't making me feel good.
This is one of the many reasons why I vehemently disliked the previous food guide. Like trying to meet some of these quotas without incredibly careful planning to choose the kind of best foods in each categories could easily result in much more calories and carbs specifically than what may be appropriate for a lot of adults, especially women. So for context, 6 to 7 servings of grains per day would be equivalent to 6 or 7 slices of bread or 3 full cups of rice. That would not feel good to my body or my gut more specifically, and that would likely result in at least a third of your daily calories coming just from grain. While we are also wanting to get some of our carbs from fruits or starchy vegetables or legumes, which would then put you at the top of the daily macros range of 45 to 65% of your calories from carbs. And that doesn't even count any of the extra carbs that aren't captured in the guide, like sugar in your coffee or a cookie after lunch or a little honey in your oats, which also add carbohydrates to your day. In contrast, depending on which meat and alternatives and dairy choices you make, you could likely be sitting at the bottom end of the recommended range for daily protein. And then fat is kind of like a total wild card because the guide doesn't really give good recommendations on whole food fats. So eating 60 to 65% of your calories from carbs and only 10 to 15% from protein may work for some people, but there is plenty of evidence that a lot of adults can benefit from closer to 30% of calories from protein. And that might mean around 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which is almost twice the recommended 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight for baseline needs. And this is especially true for folks with concerns or goals around weight management, insulin resistance, and also a desire to maintain metabolically protective muscle mass as we age. You're probably gonna have a really hard time meeting those thresholds within your calorie needs if you're having to eat half a loaf of bread a day. So yeah, I'm not at all surprised that this protocol felt unintuitive to her. The origins of the food guide are also not without controversy, which is another reason that I've kind of been turned off of its use. So want to know how we got our early data on human nutrition in Canada? This.
And it largely came from 2 major studies. It came from these malnourishment experiments on Indigenous children in the 1940s and 50s. These experiments took place at Canada's residential school. So as an experiment, they used some of the children as a control group to create a baseline for what malnourishment looks like.
Honestly, it is a pretty horrific truth that shockingly and regrettably, I didn't even learn about until adulthood. This was not even part of my dietetics curriculum almost 20 years ago. Thankfully, I believe that's been updated, and I would love to do a whole other video to discuss the racist origins of a lot of nutrition truths that we use today and kind of how we can continue to work towards reconciliation. I guess I've got to get to that another day, but that is not the only point of contention that a lot of us have towards the guide.
There is evidence that the biofood industry interferes with the development of public food policies worldwide through corporate political activity.
Yes. According to this 2023 paper, the biofood industry has attempted to influence food policy in a multitude of ways, from suppressing unflattering research to a revolving door of food industry staff in government positions and vice versa, to financial investments and a lot more. And in the 2009 food guide, and also many before it, we could see a lot of this just by the language and recommendations it made. So, for example, emphasizing meat as the name leader of Meat and Alternatives Food Group insinuates that meat is essential, even though we have ample evidence that we should be leaning way more heavily on plant protein first. Also, advocating for vague, broad categories like grains allowed a lot of sugary breakfast cereal to kind of sneak in there and claim their place as a government-approved choice, especially because you gotta meet those 6 to 7 servings somehow. And not making a greater effort to differentiate highly processed from whole food choices like a hot dog versus a chicken breast or white Wonder Bread versus whole grain was also likely industry informed. There are so many issues that I could go on about, and I did a little bit more in this video right here if you want to watch it. But yeah,
listening to your body to tell you what you need. So I was curious to see if that might solve my problem. It made me realize that intuitive eating probably isn't the best solution for me right now because it's too loose of a structure and I can't trust myself.
I am obviously a huge proponent of intuitive eating, but positioning it against something like the food guide, I do feel it kind of demonstrates a lot of the misconceptions and myths about the intuitive eating movement that really get in the way of people fully embracing the tenets. Melissa took an online quiz, which is actually a validated tool that can be used in research to assess where you're kind of at with your intuitive eating skills. But scoring low on any particular element like she did doesn't mean that intuitive eating won't work for you. That's definitely not the purpose of the quiz. It's just an indication that it may be an area to explore further. Like, even the most seasoned intuitive eating coaches or experts wouldn't expect to get a perfect score every time they take the test. There's also a common misconception that intuitive eating is just like eating off vibes, or it's the eat whatever the you want diet, or the hunger fullness diet. It's actually none of those things. Intuitive eating is a mind-body framework that is grounded in self-care. It's about detaching yourself from external food noise and diet culture and making food choices without judgment. That means that there will be days when you are feeling emotional and you're craving ice cream, and you honor that craving without making it a statement of your morality. Other times we find that we're like intuitively adding vegetables to our meals because, we've collected enough data judgment-free over time to know that that's just kind of what feels good to our body. So there are 10 principles of intuitive eating, which I dive into a lot more detail in my series right here. And a lot of those principles can still be valuable to those who feel that they may need more structure in their nutrition and meal planning.
Still looking for some guidance, I returned to the food guide. And turns out even the food guide recognizes that it has a problem because they came out with a new shiny version in 2019 that looks very different.
Yes, very different indeed. And thank goodness for that. As you can see, instead of prescribing servings from each food group in like an archaic rainbow, the new guide uses a plate method, which suggests around half of your plate being filled with fruits and veggies, a quarter plate with protein, which includes meats and alternatives and dairy, and half of your plate with whole grain. There's also an emphasis on drinking water, having more plant-based proteins, and other eating habits like eating with others and cooking more often at home. And as a dietitian, I think these are all amazing steps in the right direction. And I like how we are acknowledging that everyone's needs are going to be unique. This iteration has also pushed back a lot harder against industry pull by not meeting privately with food industry representatives in their consultation process, and also publishing their own research backing the guide recommendation. And this is huge, especially with the plant slant that they've taken here, because it is not new knowledge that eating more plant-based foods are good for health. It just took a while for the government to prioritize that research over the influence of the meat industry. Now, with that said, it's not a perfect system from my perspective as a dietitian. For one, I think the plate method can be a little confusing for people to visualize when it comes to like mixed meals, like a stir fry or a casserole or like a soup or something. Not every balanced plate is going to be the classic veg, protein, carb, especially when there are foods that play kind of double duty. So for example, what happens if you use a high protein chickpea noodle in your meal? Like, where do those go? Also, what about healthy fats? Like, there isn't a whole lot of guidance on fats here, which I think doesn't really speak to our updated knowledge on their importance. Finally, while I love whole grains, I don't really think they deserve their own category when there are lots of fruits and veggies that also satisfy that kind of high fiber carb meal component And a lot of folks limit their grains due to intolerances and other preferences. And this is why I reimagined this framework with my hunger crushing combo. If you find the plate method confusing because of mixed meals, or you kind of struggle with the binary categories, my hunger crushing combo might be the most useful way to help you build balanced meals without dieting. This is an additive nutrition framework. So rather than thinking about what you need to take away or restrict in your diet, you simply thinking about adding in fiber, protein, and healthy fats. This framework can be updated and manipulated kind of based on your goals and your needs, but by focusing on the hunger crushing compounds, you're going to build meals that are inherently more satiating, help stabilize blood sugars, and offer a whole food matrix that come bound up with all the micronutrients that you need. The food guides also don't really mention fun foods, or what I often call naked carbs. They basically just say to limit highly processed foods, which can leave a lot of people kind of grappling what to do with that. My food philosophy is that all foods can fit in a balanced diet. So rather than saying, oh my God, you can never have Lucky Charms again, we simply encourage trying to dress up those naked carbs with hunger-crushing compounds. And because hunger-crushing compounds are so inherently satiating, you naturally kind of edge out some of the naked carbs either at that meal or in subsequent meals. And you don't have to overthink the framework, which you might if you were trying to kind of like pigeonhole foods into a category in the food guide. You know, a lot of foods have what I call dual citizenship. So for example, quinoa is rich in protein and fiber, salmon is rich in protein and healthy fats, and avocado gives you fiber and also healthy fats. This is really a framework that has helped so many people create gentle and helpful habits for healthy eating without restriction. But of course, if you need one-on-one support, I always recommend working with a dietitian, which is exactly what Melissa seemed to do. And that RD's advice was awesome. So I definitely recommend watching the whole video over there for her take. But that is all that I have for you guys today. If you like this video, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below on if you've tried eating any of the frameworks that we described here. Don't forget to listen to Bite Back. I will be leaving a link in the description, and I'll see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye.